This show is sponsored by Mighty Capital, the go-to venture capital firm for product-first companies like Airbnb and Amplitude. Learn why they are dubbed the best value for the dollar invested at mighty.capital. I'm SC Moadi, founder and chair of Products That Count, a 501c3 nonprofit engaging over 500,000 product managers. Our mission is simple: help you build great products through groundbreaking research, prestigious awards, and top-notch programming like this award-winning Top 1% podcast. Whether you're aiming to boost your career or turn your product team into a competitive advantage, this is your gateway. Visit productsthatcount.org and begin your product leadership journey. This particular series is hosted by one of the first chief product officers in the world, Renee, Niemi, and each episode is a masterclass in product leadership. Renee, over to you.
Hello. Today I have with me David Feuer. He is the Chief Product Officer of Galileo. Hey, Dave, it is so great to see you again. And I want to just start by saying congratulations on being a finalist for our top CPO award this year.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Excellent. I've been really looking forward to catching up. It's been a while, and I know you've got so many wonderful stories. Before we dive in, would you mind spending like 60 seconds or less, just a quick intro to yourself, Galileo and their products and anything specific around like what you're responsible for at Galileo?
Sure. So at Galileo, we help fintechs, banks, and brands reinvent how people connect with their money. So, customers use our platform and our technology to create financial solutions centered around people and their financial needs. So that spans the gamut of solutions from sort of network processing and legacy sort of debit card issuing and bank accounts, all the way through money movement and even banking software such as banking cores, digital banking solutions, risk solutions, etc. We're changing the way people connect with their money across multiple different segments, and we've got we do business in 16 countries. We've got over 200 brands and over 150 million end users that use our software and solutions. So super exciting position as the Chief Product Officer of Galileo. And I'm just loving the opportunities across all these different segments, and all these different markets and segments to really have an impact.
Amazing. It's funny because as chief product officers, well, actually, as any product managers, impact is always such a high motivator, right? Like, how many people's lives can you make better through the products we deliver? And wow, I had no idea that so many people are using your products. That has to be very rewarding.
It's awesome. And it's funny because, we talk a lot about impact, but there's sort of quantitative impact and qualitative impact, right? I think in terms of 150 million end users plus, right? It's like, wow, that's a lot of people whose lives we touch. And obviously financial services is sort of central to everybody's life. And so it's a very important component there. But there's also qualitative impact and how much of an impact we're having. And just looking at some of our larger clients and the services that they offer through us and their ability to let consumers get access to credit where they otherwise couldn't, or help build their credit score and sort of help them on their financial journey. It's something that's tremendously meaningful and something that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, obviously you didn't come out of college and walk right into this massive high impact role. So much of our journeys, there are always, like, you look back and there's these really interesting defining moments. So when you kind of look back on your journey, was there a particular product that you go, that was the defining moment for me, where I knew, A, that this was going to be my forever job, and B, that you really feel like you had kind of made it as a product manager or leader?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's sort of two different questions, right? I think there was a point at which I recognized I am now a product manager. And that was an impactful moment that I certainly would love to share. And then, of course, there's the point at which I had sort of an epiphany of like, this is what product management is. And this is how I need to sort of forge a new path to where I want to go in my career. And I think those are actually two different inflection points. I started off my career actually as an engineering major and disliked it because I taught myself how to program in high school and found that I wasn't learning a whole bunch. And it was sort of the dot-com era. And so I was in university and I decided to switch to be a business major because I really didn't know all that much about business. And of course, I thought I'd end up starting my own company. By the time I graduated, the dot-com era had completely failed. I don't know if failed, but the dot-bomb era had come. And so I had to go get a job. And of course, regardless of my business training, I went and got a job as an engineer, as many of us started off our careers there. I was an engineer for 3-4 years. I became an engineering manager. I was enjoying it. And then I ended up I ended up getting into a number of fights with one of our product managers who just, at the end of the day, in retrospect, it was just that we weren't on the same page. I don't think his ideas were wrong. I don't think he was doing anything wrong, but I just had a very different philosophy and market strategy and just couldn't see the path to market using his approach. And through through a bunch of angry young man syndrome, I was able to have him reassigned to a different project and basically had convinced the CTO at the time to make me the product manager for the product. And fortunately for myself, the product ended up very successful. And he basically said, congratulations, you are now a product manager. You are no longer an engineering manager. And really from that day, I've been in product management. So, greater than 20 years time, working as a partner with engineering managers and no longer being an engineering manager, sort of defining what the product is and where the market's going and what the customer problems are and really being hyper-focused there. And that was sort of what kicked off my career in product management. So the background in engineering, and I did spend a number of years actually after becoming a product manager in consulting, because I was a big believer in platform economics and in the power of APIs and really developer experiences to supercharge the value proposition of a lot of these bigger companies. So I joined, I joined a small consulting firm and I started a consulting practice, and that really shaped my perception of the market and my perception of where the customers are, because I really understood the technology and I really understood sort of how to best organize the activities around technology development to maximize the value for the customers, but really understanding the absorptive capacity, how a customer can absorb that technology and really leverage it for their best use. I really didn't understand that until I became a consultant. So I was in consulting for 6 or 7 years, and I discovered this company called Apogee that made building and deploying APIs and platforms much easier than many of the legacy technologies. And when Apogee was bought by Google, I started having conversations about joining Google. So I joined Google, and I ended up as the head of product management for Apogee at Google, which is Google's API management platform. And I learned a lot in that experience. But I think one of the defining moments that sort of was the crescendo of this arc of me discovering how customers can absorb technology and really use it for where they are in their journey and not necessarily for where I am as a product manager. Was, I was working with one of the largest banks in Europe, BNP Paribas. They're a bank in Paris, and I had flown to Paris a whole bunch of times because they were very interested in modernizing and building APIs as this core strategic construct and how they were building all their digital journeys. And I tried so many different ways to explain how I could help accelerate them, and it just wasn't resonating. It wasn't working. You get into the meeting and they want to work with me and I want to work with them. And it's like this clash of, I was enthusiastic about our technology and we had a great product, and they sort of just didn't understand how this would help them as a bank be more effective and be more powerful, and sort of help introduce innovation into the bank in this way. And so I took some time and I said, in the past, when I've tried to penetrate, sort of understand customers and understand where they are, sometimes it helps to learn about somebody's history and where they're from. And so I started researching BNP Paribas and what their what their culture was, right, and sort of where they're from. And they had a super fascinating history where actually they had, they had bought this building called Maison Dorée, which is this very famous French iconic building. And the idea was to demolish it and build a new headquarters in the 1970s. And what happened was the community actually objected. The Preservation Society and the community said, no, this is a very iconic building. The building had been there since the 17th century and was a really well-known place where, for instance, Napoleon had a private cabinet in the back of one of the restaurants in that building. The restaurant was known for inventing Tournedos, Rossini, all these terrific stories about rich French history. And so they objected to BNP Paribas knocking the building down and building this this modern structure where this historic iconic building had been. And so what happened was, in a day of rage, the architect basically said, fine, we'll keep the facade of the building. So the building will look to the community the way they expect to interface with it. And I'll knock down the rest of the building and then build the headquarters we want to build behind that building. And it actually exists till today. You can see BNP Paribas in Maison Dorée. They have the beautiful old facade of Maison Dorée and a modern glass building behind it that was their headquarters for many years. And what ended up happening was it created this movement called facadism, where the fronts of buildings, the facades of the buildings were preserved, but the back of the buildings were able to be modernized for the needs of the company or the community or the apartment building or whatever was building what was being built there. And I used that as a parable, and I said, sort of keep a familiar facade for your customers with modern omni-channel journeys that allow your company to interface with them in the way they expect, where they are, where your customers are, and then modernize your back end at whatever speed you want, whatever speed is demanded by your business. And I basically said, it's in your DNA. You invented facadism. All you're doing is taking that invention and bringing it to the digital world. It resonated immediately, and the project was a huge success. They became a very important client. And it's actually one of the key points at which I got very interested in the effect that digital can have in financial services. But that experience taught me like the power of storytelling and technology adoption. Being able to understand the depth of technology for non-technologists and being able to take that and say, oh, here's how I can leverage that to create new experiences and have more impact on my customers. That was a key inflection point in my career, and the point at which I realized storytelling is a key part of being a product manager.
Yeah. Wow. That was, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. And yeah, I just learned something new. I've never heard of facadism, but it makes a lot of sense. There's so many things that are deep, passionate learnings in there, right? Just the mindset of your customer matters. And when you're a product manager or a product leader leading a team of product managers, making sure that you don't just understand the customer problem, but you understand the underlying culture of the customer and how it may or may not allow for adoption is so critical.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the challenges we have is that in our position, we tend to take our personal experiences and try to relate them to the customers. And sometimes that works well. And sometimes that works terribly, right? I frequently repeat the adage that my opinion is interesting but irrelevant, because at the end of the day, whether I would do something or how I would feel in that situation is important, but it's really about what the customers are going to do and what the segment that I'm trying to penetrate is going to do. And sometimes those are people in different cultures, in different countries, in different markets that have different concerns. And so being able to really understand what their needs are and really spend time with them and spend time in those markets to really understand the deep challenges that they have and how we can solve them better than other, let's say, competitors or substitute products. That's really what a lot of the job is about.
It sure is. It sure is. And if you immerse yourself with your customer long enough, eventually you start to feel your customer and you get some of that intuition Even if you haven't observed it, you can almost put yourself in their shoes. I love that focus. Are there any rituals you've developed and or shared with your team to kind of make sure you don't lose that learning?
Yeah, so I think there are a few. I mean, I think the first is that we frequently speak to customers. I think if there's a week where I haven't talked to a customer or something is wrong, and I try to model that for the team where it's very obvious that talking to customers is not something that has to be done as sort of a chore, but it's sort of it's an opportunity to get in that customer space and understand what their challenges are, where they're succeeding, where they're not, and how we might be able to help. And sometimes us being able to help is referring them to a partner or telling them that this is just not something we can or should solve, but is something that needs to be solved. And so helping them on that journey is super important. I think modeling that has been really meaningful for me because I've also learned a whole bunch, not just about our prospects and those sorts of calls, but also about our existing long-term clients who are happy and have been getting a bunch of value out of our platform for many years. In many cases, still have friction and still have challenges, and so creating that trust, having them share that with me, and then doing my best as the product leader to sort of go back and say, is this something we should solve? How can we solve it? And if not, what should we tell the customer? How can they go solve this for themselves? That's been super valuable, I think, for the team. So as a ritual, I certainly think meeting with customers frequently has been great, customers and prospects both. I think the other one that we've really introduced that's been terrifically meaningful is product performance review. And so, many times product organizations have an ops review, and it tends to create a sort of defensive posture or almost a Socratic environment where there's an inquisition, right? You're asking a whole bunch of tough questions to the team and they've got to scramble to answer them. And I really, because of a number of challenges I had when I joined the team towards the end of 2022 and in the beginning of 2023, we had a whole bunch of challenges, obviously, having to do with economic downturn and some difficult decisions about laying employees off. And so creating we had a lot of opportunities to build trust and psychological safety within the team. So creating an environment where we can really monitor product performance and make sure we're having the impact we want, and creating a ritual that said on a monthly basis, every PM gets a dedicated slot to discuss their product, represent their product, discuss their progress towards OKRs. And then we also have, KPIs where we'll see month over month trends going one way or the other. And it wasn't just a meeting, it became sort of a stage where we could showcase work, get constructive feedback, feel valued. And also it enabled me to sort of demonstrate to product managers that I'm here to unblock you and make sure you're focused in the right direction. But at the end of the day, you manage your product. You know a lot more about it than I do. And so how can I help? That was a ritual that we've started, and over a year of it has proved particularly valuable. I think it's created ongoing support and interest. It allows me to reach out to product managers who report into, they may be 2 or 3 levels down from me, but it allows me to express interest, have a creative venue where I can interact with them directly, and also transform the culture because it becomes a space that the PM leads sort of look forward to. And it creates this culture it fosters a culture of data-driven decision-making and raising blockers and red flags. And those are encouraged and rewarded. And so rather than being this ops review culture where it's negative and sort of inquisitive, it's more of how can I help? Is this a problem, or is this a good trend or a bad trend? And how can we look at sort of affecting that? And I think that's had a hugely meaningful impact on the team.
Amazing. It sounds like you've created a really welcoming environment and that fosters collaboration and psychological safety, which is super important because you want product managers to ask questions when they have questions, and you also want them to take a certain amount of calculated risk. And if you create a culture of safety, you can really put the guardrails on there and B, just keep that conversation going, which I think is super high impact. Great stuff. All right. Well, so obviously you're a really busy guy. And by the way, you're in good company because most chief product officers, actually anybody in the C-suite is really, really busy. And so much of your decision making is guarded by like, okay, I only have, so many hours. How am I going to allocate those hours? Tell me your philosophy on where you spend time as a leader. How do you think about your time in that context?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was thinking as you were asking the question that the nonstop meetings are a perfect example of product management, where you're constantly faced with nonstop market trends, customer demands, engineering challenges, and opportunities, and you're just constantly making trade-offs for the higher value activities. Right? It's really just a magnified version of that. In terms of where I try to spend most of my time, I think it's a really complex question. I think we've got some significant market dynamics that are opportunities that we are ripe to take advantage of. And so being able to figure out how to balance taking advantage of those opportunities and really delivering net new value propositions to the market, balancing that with sort of strategic thinking around steering our product portfolio in a way that makes sense for all of our market segments. Again, we've got market segments like banking software, where you have folks who've worked in banks. As an example, we have a banking core, and there's sometimes when we're talking to a bank, and they have somebody that's been at that bank for 25 to 30 years working on banking cores. So it doesn't get any deeper. And running the gamut from that all the way to, let's say, a brand, and this is embedded finance, right? A brand that wants to offer a credit product, or a brand that wants to offer deposit accounts to customers, but they know nothing about banking. They literally know nothing about financial services. And so they're sort of asking us, hey, we know we want to get into this space, but we really know nothing about it, as opposed to having 25 years of experience where it simply doesn't get any deeper. Being able to create a product portfolio across those dimensions of customer segments and personas becomes incredibly challenging. And so I try to spend a lot of my time thinking about the customer journeys and how we're supporting them, and really spending time on focusing on a few things as opposed to focusing on everything, because there's simply no way we can focus on all the things that are important. It's really not a question of what's important. It's what's more important versus what's less important. And I will tell you selfishly that I like to focus on the things where I think we're also contributing to society. So we're also doing things where we're helping in the areas of financial inclusion and responsible lending, and creating products that are alternatives to, let's say, more predatory financial products that exist in the market. So I definitely sort of have, that's a personal leaning that I have, where we really want to help people connect with their money, and we want to be a positive force in their financial life. And so that's really important to me. In terms of my focus this year, I'd say there's two specific areas, and they couldn't be more different. I think the first is I'm really focused on helping my team figure out how to capture micro moments for our clients. If I think about our clients are, let's say, fintechs, neobanks that have customers themselves. And so if I think about the micro moments and sort of a deep understanding around, let's say, lending decisions, there's 2 or 3 micro moments, it turns out, where customers are making decisions about lending. The first is when they're at checkout. You're checking out from a site and you see something's very expensive. Do you want to hit that buy now, pay later button and sort of create that impulse buy and buy something that you probably can't afford at that very moment, but may be able to afford over time? And that's one micro moment. And while we do support that more or less, we don't support it in an impulse form factor, because we feel that that's not the most responsible way to extend lending. And so we actually prefer to create a database approach and enable the bank to proactively offer, hey, if you need it, you have money that you can borrow in this sort of environment. And so that's one micro moment. But there's other micro moments too, right? When a customer gets their bill for a product, when a customer sees a charge for their card, those are micro moments where we can help inform them about better lending decisions than, let's say, simply allowing the charge to live on their credit card as a piece of credit card debt. And so being able to figure out how to identify those micro moments, capture them, and really understand the micro moments for that specific segment and bring that to our clients and open up those micro moments as opportunities for our clients to offer products. I think that's core to our identity as product managers. And so that's one of the two areas where I'm spending my year for sure, is how do we identify those key micro moments and open those up as opportunities for our clients to get in front of their customers in their digital flow. The second one, which couldn't be more different, is banking software. The disks may be faster and the shelving may be shinier, but at the end of the day, banking software looks like these big refrigerator-sized things that are in somebody's basement, some data center somewhere. And that's not just a statement about hardware. It's also software. It's heavy, it's monolithic. It all looks and operates like it did in the 1960s. And so as I think about like how other industries have really adapted, like retail and telecom, and sort of, if you think about the dominant designs in those markets, even on the consumer side, right? The rotary dial telephone has turned into an iPhone, right? For a while, it was a pager, and then there was like a pager with a keyboard, BlackBerry type thing, and now it's a slab of glass, right? Or the retail manual cash register, and how that's become Amazon's just walkout. Like, software in those industries has fundamentally changed the consumer experience so much that it's almost unrecognizable. And yet in financial services, we've got this COBOL-driven monolithic software that looks like it did in the 1960s. And so really trying to figure out how we create an environment for the next generation of developers that are graduating university with cloud native skills, expect a cloud native environment, expect cloud native software, and want to interact and cause a bank to operate at the speed that the market expects and that the market is sort of demanding of banks. That's, I think, a key part of modernizing banking software. And there was a study in last year that 47% of checking accounts were opened in neobanks and banking challengers. They weren't open in banks, in traditional banks. And that's because the neobanks operate at the speed that the internet expects and not at the speed at which the bank software holds them back. So really kind of figuring out how to unlock banking systems and banking software and deliver that so that the banks can meet the needs of next generation customers, whether they're developers trying to build on that bank's technology or whether they're customers of the bank. How do we allow the bank to operate at internet speed and unlock sort of that banking software challenge? That's, I think, the other key area of focus for me. And so between the micro moments and the banking software challenge, we've got our hands full.
Yeah, I would say so. And what strikes me is really there's a really interesting balance in your two areas of focus that are fairly, I would say, short-term in nature, and some that are fairly visionary and innovative in nature. And so, it really it is a nice balance on kind of how you're contributing and spending your time this year. What would you say is your secret sauce? Either, as a product manager or as a leader, do you have certain best practices that you use, and how do you use that secret sauce to make, both you and your team successful?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I touched on it at a higher level. So let me go into a little bit of detail. I think, boy, tough question. I think if I really look at it, I think my secret sauce is servant leadership. So, that's sort of the heart of my approach, which is like, how do I facilitate the growth of my team members and put them in the best possible position to succeed, right? So how do we create an environment where like inspiration and motivation thrive, and my team knows that I'm there for them as opposed to they're sort of serving me. And I think a big part of that is thinking of my role more as a coach, where a coach may say, hey, just to use a football analogy, you are super fast, but as a wide, you're much more valuable to me as a cornerback than a wide receiver. And so a great coach will see a wide receiver come out of college and put them in a cornerback position in the NFL because they're faster than the wide receivers and they can anticipate the pass and they can play better defense than they can offense. And so I think, servant leadership is really about putting my employees in the best position to succeed, fielding the best team I can, sort of knowing that the play strategies are changing, the plays are changing, the teams we're playing are changing, the stadium is changing, but at the end of the day, I've got my team. And yeah, sure, we can hire some and we can bench some, and there's opportunities to shift the team, but at the end of the day, that's the team. And so, as a coach, thinking about the context of where we're at, where the opportunities are, and where the strengths are of my team, putting them in a position where they can, we talked about building trust and psychological safety, but where they can really succeed and they can develop a strategy, develop a goal, and show me supporting them on that path versus telling them what the goal is and telling them what the strategy is and having them implement that, I think puts them in a lot better position. And I think we end up winning a lot more for the customer that way, because if we think about, Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game, right? And sort of these are not finite journeys. And so once a product is delivered, it's not like we say, oh, great, awesome, I've delivered a product, I'm going home, right? There's always more work to do. And there's always more work to make sure, are we landing that product with the right market segments in the right way? Are they able to use it the way they want? Where are the challenges? What does the next iteration of that product look like? Sometimes the answer is there is no next iteration and you move on to the next product. But that's rarely the case. And so empowering my team to use me to point them in the right direction and unblock them and then let them go and sort of create the next iteration and next generation of features, market segments to approach, and that sort of product journey is, I think, my secret sauce, which it's what allows me to succeed. And I'm very lucky to have worked with some tremendously awesome teams that have really just made me look great.
I think they're pretty lucky to be working with a leader that sees their role in that light, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, I knew this was going to happen, Dave. we have come to the end of our conversation. I could just keep going for hours with you, but I would be remiss if we didn't leave with at least one small conversation around our favorite topic, AI.
Sure.
My question for you is specifically around the impact of AI on the function of product management. What are you seeing today? What do you think that short-term impact? Are you implementing any of that stuff? And where do you think AI impacts the role in kind of 2 or 3 years out?
So we're definitely leveraging AI on a regular basis. The first thing I would say is we're leveraging AI to build products. So we've got two products. One is a transaction risk platform that sort of looks at the behavior of all the fintechs on our network and allows us to very dynamically respond to those behaviors in order to protect our clients against fraudulent transactions and new points of compromise. And so that's one area where we're able to take all of this data and very quickly turn it into meaningful events for our clients, and they can either automatically block or sort of respond to them. And that's that's a great use of AI. Let's say to create value for our clients. There's another one that we have which uses our own custom software to really understand the intent of a client when they come. And we've created this intelligent digital assistant that responds to financial services, customer service requests, and does so in sort of the tone that the bank wants to project. So a more informal tone or a more formal tone. And depending on the customer, it can sort of adjust to that market segment. So it can sound, it sounds relevant and relatable. So we're using AI in a number of different areas of the company, and that's been a tremendous amount of success for us. But product managing that AI is first of all what I would say. A lot of it's really understanding the basics of that AI. For instance, on the intelligent digital assistant, we've currently built it using custom software, custom transformers. And so now as we look at the large language models and saying, hey, is there a way to leverage the large language model technology, but make sure that the AI is accurate? Because obviously it can't give the wrong information to a banking customer and tell them they have the wrong balance, or that a transaction has settled when it really hasn't. And can we do that in a way that maintains the privacy posture and, of course, regulatory compliant nature of banking? So we have very strict structures around that. And so I think understanding the technologies is important, but that doesn't really answer your question, which is to say, as a product manager, how should I be thinking about AI affecting my job? Not how am I using AI to deliver new services to customers? I think in the short term, there's a lot to be said around privacy, model review, and automation, and using AI to really create structures that satisfy the needs in those areas for performing those things. For instance, what's changed in a model and all of that, right? Creating the structures around that using AI in order to make informed decisions around what to release, what to review, and ensure that privacy is where it needs to be. I'd say that's one of them, right? And then the other is really, can we be using AI almost as an assistant to be able to help us do things like market research and think about trends based on AI's, large language models have access to social media. Can I get more out of, let's say, ChatGPT than I could out of simply doing a search on X? Well, on Twitter. Sorry, I haven't quite made the shift yet. So, can we take what used to be sort of static searches and make them dynamic? And so I think leveraging AI to really help inform us about trends and market decisions and sort of that whole world, I think that's key to being a product manager today. And I simply don't see a situation where somebody's writing somebody wants supporting statistics for a given area, and they can get better results out of a simple search query than they could, let's say, out of an AI search in one of the large language models that we know about today. So I think there's definitely a piece to be said there, and I think that's important. If I think about the impact 3 years from now, I can certainly pretend to predict the weather 3 years from now, and I'd probably do a better job than predicting where AI will be 3 years from now. I think my recommendation to product managers would be this. Around 20 years ago, as an industry, we began a shift from a 250-year-old industrial era of product development to a digital era of product development, from supply aggregation to demand aggregation, from sort of physical platforms to digital platforms. And that really changed consumer behavior because we sort of immersed ourselves in rather than going about town for 3 or 4 hours and doing what we needed with, let's say, groceries and banks and cell phone stores and sort of all of the presence of all the brands that we use were centered around the economic activity that was in the center of town. We've shifted that to the digital world. And so figuring out how to get in customers' digital flows and figuring out how to create new flows and sort of be there when customers need you to be there and disappear was the name of the game in digital. And that's why we had these digital assistants and sort of Amazon Alexa and Google Home and all these, and the Apple Watch and all these things sort of created new modalities and new experiences where customers could get what they needed in the digital world because they were spending 3 or 4 hours in front of a screen as opposed to 3 or 4 hours going about town. And I think that shift to digital, we're going to see a similar shift with AI. I think it's going to take the transformation much further, embedding itself into our daily interactions. And so understanding what are the guardrails around those interactions, what do customers need, and how to serve them within that model, I think that's the name of the game. We don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think any of us have any idea 3 years from now how AI is going to shape the customer experience, particularly the consumer experience, but also in a business context. So we know what the tools are looking like today. If I think about the tools of tomorrow, all I can think about is maintaining the optionality and flexibility in my product so that I can solve a problem in whatever modality comes to be the expected sort of interface that AI provides. Does that look like Siri? Does that look like a text box in a device? I don't know. And I don't think, I think we've all got ideas, but I think maintaining that optionality is going to be key. And I think 3 years down the line, we're going to be having a very different conversation about how we're taking that optionality and applying that to the consumer experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you're really kind of framing this, just to kind of put it in my own words. It sounds like, hey, it's pretty obvious. You can kind of check, chunks in the short term and you start to implement what makes sense. But in the long term, who knows? And so you kind of have to keep that flexibility, growth mindset and anticipation and just continue to experiment.
Absolutely. 100%. I couldn't have said it better.
Awesome. Hey, Dave, it was so much fun spending time with you. Thank you for sharing all of your insights. And I just want to, again, congratulate you on a well-deserved finalist as a top CPO this year.
Thank you.
This is SC Moadi again, founder and chair of Products That Count. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform, including Spotify and Apple. And please check out our other resources at productsthatcount.org. They're designed to accelerate your product career and make product the most important function in business. Until soon.